Right, the video's gone live, so please don't swear. And then, so just so you know who's here and who isn't, we've got, I forgot that guy's name again. Maqsood. So Maqsood from the Workers' Party of Britain candidate, he didn't reply to me, so I don't know why he's not here, he didn't get back to me. James Collis from the Lib Dems, he's poorly, that's why he's not here, so we can't hold that against him. He did want to be here, he has sent a message saying he can't get, can all be poorly. And then Juliet, Campbell, didn't get back to me neither. So, well, actually, she replied to say I'll get back to you, then never got back to me, so there you go.
And the other notice there, it says don't lean on, put things on top of the radio. I don't need to use that.
Everyone else sits here. It's over to you, Mr. Vicar.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to St Helens Church Hall, and I kind of hope that we can have a lively and informative debate, but I would encourage everyone to try and do it in a respectful manner as we do that. And the reason I'll try, there are more questions than I expect we'll get through. If there's ones that I've noticed have repeated several times, I'll mangle some of your questions together into one, but I will let the candidates know that maybe there's 2 or 3 people who've asked the same question, so that you know that it's not just a single question as well, so we get some ideas for that. But first things first, if we start at the end of this table, and you've got about 2 minutes to introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're from, and what's the most important thing to you about this election. So start with Dr. John Doddy.
Thanks very much indeed. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today and to see so many of you here today. I arrived in Nottingham in 1991. I still remember coming down the M1, getting to Junction 25, down Toton Lane, left into Derby Road, and starting as a doctor in the old Derby Road Health Centre. They've knocked it down and made it a Witherspoons now, which is a considerable improvement. I then set up a surgery, Hickings Lane Medical Centre on Hickings Lane, with 400 patients. Today it's close to 8,000 patients. Now, I did that with my wife Teresa, known as Nurse Teresa, and we've been married for 35 years. Don't let me forget the anniversaries on memory. So we've been married for 35 years. We've got 3 boys and 2 grandchildren, 5 and 10. My passion when I'm not a doctor and I'm not a family man is running marathons from New York to London, and you can often see me out in the streets of Stapleford and Trowell and Bramket. Now you might think I'm just out there running, but I'm actually looking for potholes and looking for pavements and doing a community service. That's who I am, and why am I here? Because as a GP I know that only 10% of your health exists within my surgery. 90% of it exists in the communities in which you live. And I have a passion for public health, and I've been on the County Council, the Health and Wellbeing Board on and off for the last 12 years. Just to bring an idea through, I recently went down to London to the Secretary of State for Health's office and handed in a request to fluoridate the water of Nottingham, because the dental decay amongst our children is so awful. Children are actually going to school, not able to chew food, not able to sleep at night with dental pain, and fluoridation would mean 1/3, 33% reduction in that, 15% of the kids with no tooth decay whatsoever. That's just the beginning. You'll hear more throughout the day. My passion is public health, and I'm here to deliver that on a population level intervention. And that's why I want to be your MP. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Same question to Teresa.
Hello, thank you for coming. My name is Teresa Needham. I am your Green Party candidate for this election. I have lived in Stapleford pretty much all of my life. I went to William Lilly Infant School, I then went to Fairfield Primary School, and then went to George Spencer Secondary School. You may remember me from when the co-op was in Stapleford on the High Street. I worked behind the deli counter, so serving cooked meats. I'm actually now a vegetarian. I did then go on and become a science teacher for a while. I was based up in Eastwood Comprehensive School for a little bit, doing a placement there while I was doing my teacher training. So I know a little bit about Eastwood as well, and the issues that they face. I now work at the University of Nottingham. I am a laboratory manager in the School of Geography. So I'm there training the next generation of climate scientists, ecologists, people who are experts in flooding and water quality. So that's where my passion for the environment comes from. And yes, I know I'm going to talk about the environment a bit. One of the main reasons I'm stood here today is because obviously this election comes in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet we have people who are working reliant on food banks. We have schools that are crumbling. Like Doddy has also said, you know, our NHS is in crisis. We have incredible lengths of waiting lists causing all kinds of problems. There is obviously something very wrong with our current economic system. On Wednesday, we launched our Green Party manifesto. There was some big numbers on spend there, and I know it raised a few eyebrows, but we are being honest on what needs to be spent to put these things right. We have got a spend plan, and I will probably talk about that more, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joseph, same questions to you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Hi, my name's Joseph. I'm standing to be your Reform UK candidate at the election on July 4th. Britain is broken. After 14 years of Conservative rule, the country has been in constant decline. And the fact is, this is one of the few elections where we have a chance to change it. There is very little difference between the Conservative and Labour Party at the moment. They stand for broadly the same principles. The Conservatives are bankrolled by the big banks, Labour by the unions. And at this election, you have a chance to vote for genuine change. We want to break the two-party system. The two-party system doesn't serve you. All that happens is the Conservatives will mess up, and then Labour get to have 14 years in power, or however long. They mess up your generation, they mess up your life, and then the Conservatives are back in. That's been the cycle for a century, and at this election, we must create change. We have a movement with reform. We are now, especially in Brexit voting seats like this, we are not just 1 point ahead of the Tories, we are several points ahead. Even if just half of the Conservatives' 2019 voters who they betrayed still voted with the party, they would not have a chance here. The only party that can stand up to Labour in this constituency with a candidate who does know the local community is with Reform UK. We are the only party that can beat Labour here. But what's even more important than that is that we have a clear plan for the country. We believe in tax rises for those working, not the mates in high places for the working class. We believe in fixing the NHS genuinely, and we believe in stopping positive net migration while still allowing key workers in. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for coming today. I'm Darren Henry, the Conservative Party and Unionist Party candidate. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to concentrate on some of my background, which I don't think will come out in questioning. So I'm a 26-year veteran of the Royal Air Force, done many tours, including Iraq. I'm a father and a husband, and actually what brought me to Nottingham in the first place was I was seeking to buy a house. I grew up in Bedford and I couldn't afford in Bedford. My dad said, bricks and mortar, son, that's what you want to put your money in. I couldn't afford in Bedford on an SAC's wage, so I was stationed at RAF Richmond and I came to Nottingham. So that was 1989. Met my wife in 1994. She's from Eastwood, born and bred, and married her in 1998. My children were born in Nottingham City Hospital, twins, 6 weeks premature, got brilliant care, in 2000. In 2001, I was living in our house, which is in Nuttall, on the Mornington Crescent estate, if anybody knows it. And the military posted me out. I did 2 years as an instructor at Cranwell, probably by 2 years, all over the place. The family came with me. My last tour was at Boscombe Down, where I did 4 months working in a NHS hospital, and then I was general manager of a food distribution business for a year. And then I decided it was public service I liked. I wasn't a business person. I wasn't worried about the bottom line. I was there because I was had a logistics background. So I was picking up litter in the local place that I lived, joined the parish council, became ran a youth club with some other people, which hadn't existed before, and became a county councillor and a portfolio holder. So when I stood for MP, I stood for places I had connection with, and this is the place I've got the most connection with of all. So just to finish on that, because I can see that Padre's hands up. When I've been an MP in Parliament, I think, what's in it for Broxley? So that's what I concentrate on, and make sure that I'm the only one who can represent people in London, and therefore I need to make sure that I know what's going on in the constituency. I need to have a presence here when I'm not in London, so that I can listen and actually bring about a law change as I did when I was an MP.
Thank you, Darren. So, question-wise, I'm going to try and get through as many questions as we can. Some of them are duplicated, so those questions which are duplicated I'll try and summarise, and I'll try and say how many questions are on the same line, so you get an idea of the weight behind the question. So question to all the candidates. Charities underpin the country's social infrastructure. Their workloads are increasing and their finances are decreasing. How will your party underpin charities in England to enable them to achieve financial sustainability whilst meeting their ever-increasing workloads and demands? And what we'll do, we'll start at the end of this table again, and then I'll just kind of move, next time we do it, we'll kind of jump one at a time. So, Dr. John Doddy, charities.
Yes, indeed. When we start going out into the community and getting help from people in the community through what we call social prescribing, which is the...
Can you speak up a little, please? Sorry.
I could, or you could come up to one of these seats at the front.
I didn't even...
There's a spare seat here.
Well, I'll come to the front, but you're still talking quietly for those who are a bit... Oh, well, I might just do that.
Hang on, I was only joking. Yes, so I think when we look at things like social prescribing, and we were trying to get everybody who's at home and everybody who can't get out to do things, out to dig in and other such wonderful things in Stapleford. The one
Sorry,
thing...
John, still can't hear you.
You still can't hear me now. When I was thinking about social prescribing and how we get people out into wonderful organisations in Stapleford, such as Dig In, pre-COVID, all of those people were ably helped by volunteers. COVID and the cost of living crisis meant that people could not afford to do charity work. They could not afford to give up their jobs. They had to get paid work. And as such, the charities and the people who represented charities had to step back to look after the families and the kids. And therefore the resources, manpower-wise, for the charities, which is just as important as financially wise, got shrunk thereafter. And now people need that money to heat their houses, to feed their children, and therefore there is no equity without social equity, and therefore unless we turn that around, unless we make people have a better quality of life, a higher minimum wage, etc., unless we empower people, they cannot go back to do the charitable work, and they cannot afford to give that money to the charity. Let's turn it on its head.
Thank you.
So, following on from some of the points that John made there, obviously we know that there's a large proportion of the population who are actually doing unpaid work all the time. They have carer roles, they are looking after young children, they are unpaid but doing a vital service for our community. The Green Party would like to see a reform of the benefit system And ultimately, it's a long-term goal of ours to have a universal basic income, so that people who do want to not do paid work as such can still contribute to society and don't actually face problems from doing that financially. They're not actually impeded in doing that. Obviously, our voluntary sector does some fantastic work, and charitable status is something that we'd like to see protected as well. So I know that there's a lot of groups and organisations in Stapleford that do some fantastic work, like John's mentioned, digging. We've got the Helpful Bureau, who are really dependent on volunteers and the work that they do. And they have financial difficulties, because when they need a new vehicle or they need new premises, it does cost. So obviously I'd like to see some funding and help for charitable status people. Okay, thank you.
I think there's a very simple answer to this question. Right now we have, and you're going to be hearing about it. Sorry, my voice isn't quite perfect today. We have the highest tax burden since 1948. What that means is that ordinary people, because of fiscal drag, inflation's gone up, but the personal income bands haven't gone up. They're paying more tax than ever. Like over 40% of that's going to the state. Now, how does that relate to charities? Well, it's very simple. If people are seeing 40% of their money, in many ways, some people see their tax as a charity, especially with lots of things being spent on like social welfare. That essentially means they have less of their own money to give to our charities, who are doing very incredibly crucial work. We have to have a structural change about the way we think in this country. We have to think more about freedom and giving people the right to choose where they give their money to and what charities they want to support. The second issue is paperwork. Whether it's a small business, whether it is a charity, the fact is there is so much red tape in this country that instead of actually getting out to the community and helping things, many charities will be filling out form after form after form. And that's not sustainable. That's not the charitable work we need. That's not what they signed up for. And then that's disincentivising volunteers from joining. Like, this is a separate example, but the tax code is 21,000 pages. Stuff like that. It's not just that. It's the entire economy is burdened by this red tape, and that stops charities from being able to do the meaningful work that people volunteering actually want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think charities are extremely important. I remember the Olympics, for example, in 2012, where people who came down and volunteered, they were energised, they wanted to do it. They really painted the country in a good light, and some of the people who were there working were plodding along, not that interested. People who volunteer contribute so much to our society. When I ran the libraries when I was a county councillor, and we kept the libraries open because of volunteers. People who want to volunteer in libraries, they don't want to do any other kind of volunteering, but they want to do that. So what I'm saying is volunteers are absolutely fantastic. I've done a lot of volunteering myself in the past, and it's enjoyable. You get a bug for it. So that's really good. I'm a strong believer in people should take responsibilities for their actions. So if you're a parent, then you should take responsibility for your children. If you're a bus driver, you should make sure that you get your sleep so that you're ready to be sharp to be able to drive your passengers. Same too is small state. Don't have the state running everything. Utilise charities and volunteers, but support them. And that's what we did with the Towns deal. The Stapleford Towns deal, which I was able to secure, and that's why I put my constituency office where it is, because Stapleford was really in the decline. We've ended up with a lot of support for businesses, but also we are going to be able to support the library rebuild that we're having. There's going to be an enterprise hub. There's a lot of volunteer groups and charities around that are going to be able to get the benefit of the investment that we have had. And also, one last point I'd like to make is it's a backward step, I think, a short-sighted, to take away the VAT, the charitable status from private schools for the same reason.
Thank you, Darren. So, in the past years, there has been a lack of funds to support students and children with neurodiversity in education. How important is this issue to you? And what are your plans to improve educational outcomes for children and students with additional needs?
Thank that question. Obviously, as I pointed out earlier on, I did used to be a science teacher, so I've worked in education, and now working at the university, I still work with students. Obviously, mental health issues have become far more prominent. I'm actually just recently done my mental health first aid training, so I'm aware of the issues. There is a report that's come out about the failings of schools in Nottinghamshire and how they are not providing adequate care for students who have got statements saying what they need in their schools. It's actually leading to some children being educated at home because the schools cannot provide what is needed for them. Obviously, we're fortunate in Stapleford that we did have the RFME school, which was a very specialist facility. I'm pleased to say that they're getting brand new facilities with the stuff that, actually the adaptations that they need for that education. But what we would like to see as the Green Party is more funding towards county councils. So they are the local authority who are responsible for ensuring that every child gets the support that they need through the school system. Whether they are educated at home with special provision through parents, or whether they're in the school system. So it's all about funding for local education authorities.
This is also a topic very close to me. I actually used to work as a teacher, not like a full class teacher, it was a Sunday school, and I had a class of about 12 students. And in that class, we had about 3 neurodiverse students. But in my class, we were able to manage it because we had smaller class sizes. And that made it easier. All the, the kids who could focus, and some people can, sometimes I can't focus. It shouldn't be something we discriminate against. I could give them an activity to do, where you've got a teacher in class or a helper who can specially focus and tailor lesson content to the kids who need it. We've got to accept our society is a very diverse society. We've got people with different minds and different ways of thinking. The current structure of just exams, which most people see in schools, that's not necessarily helpful to lots of people who are neurodiverse in education. We've got to really look at increasing the scope of exams. But fundamentally, it comes down to having smaller class sizes, which is something that Labour will not do with their VAT tax rise on schools. That's been omitted by them, you can find it. What we need is smaller classes, and we need teaching assistants in classes focused on improving outcomes for the students that actually need it. Thank you.
Thank you. When I was a Member of Parliament, I got a lot of casework on this. It's woefully inadequate, and can't paint it any other way. I spoke to, on behalf of my constituents, I spoke to the leader of Nottinghamshire County Council. What's the situation? We need more spaces, SEND spaces and so on. Although we do have SENCOs, we do have professionals inside the schools, it's not enough. His answer to me was, yes, it's a problem, it's a huge problem. And also, where those are situated, people with SEND difficulties are having to travel long distances, and they're not equipped for that. That makes the situation even worse. So it's really, really something that I want to be able to tackle. There is some light, though, in our particular area, in Maqsood, because I spent a lot of time with Bramcote College, met them several times, and their school rebuild, once that's done, and the Foxwood provision is set up, it will include 100 extra SEND spaces. So that is absolutely fantastic news for Maqsood, I have to say. And one last point I'd like to make is neurodiverse and neurotypical people. An opportunity we have, as well as in volunteering, is in the national service, which the Conservative Party is proposing. There's been a lot of focus on thinking about joining the military, as though it was conscription. It's not that, but the 25 days a year, which is 1 weekend a month, will have neurodiverse people, neurotypical people, disabled people, wealthy people, wherever they are, geographically located, mixing together, 18 years of age, doing volunteering, welfare, NHS, etc. It's a brilliant opportunity.
Thank you. Right.
Thanks very much indeed. This is a problem that I see on a daily basis. We have obviously the special educational needs and disabilities, and I used to be a community paediatrician in Lincolnshire, and it was my job to do the examination, stamp the form and say this is the need of that child, and that stamp obligated the council and the school to provide the care for that child. In terms of neurodiversity, which was the question, the autistic spectrum disorder has gone off the scale since COVID, and kids have been living at home, and some babies had never seen another adult other than the mother and father for years. The ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, has gone off the scale, not only just in children but in adults as well. If I go into my surgery in the morning and I write a letter to a paediatrician and say, can you see this child with ADHD, the waiting list is 24 months, 2 years that child would have to, and that's just to get seen. If it's an adult, it's 30 months. This is what I call an illusion of a service. You've got a service that exists in name only, but when parents come to use it, schools come to use it, it doesn't in fact actually exist. Now, one of the problems, one of the ways of solving that is that most ASD, most ADHD is diagnosed by psychiatrists. There's a finite number of psychiatrists, everybody funnels through one way, and the way to go forward with that is to allow psychologists who are trained in psychology and behaviour, etc., to start to be able to make those diagnoses. That's the first thing. Then you get down the big waiting list, you get the diagnosis, and the money follows the diagnosis. If you've got a child in school who hasn't got a diagnosis, the school has no money to look after them. The school has no money.
We get that, take a seat, thank you. And we understand we're not giving you a lot of time to really wax over, I do apologise. Well, another question we have, and for all our candidates is, we'll start with you this time, Joseph. Sure. What is your personal attitude towards the genuine asylum seekers who come to this country seeking asylum? And what are your policies concerning them which you support?
Well, I think what this country needs is a fairer system. Right now, there are lots of, some would say genuine, I think it's controversial how we define that, but the fact is there has to be a fair system where everyone is treated equally. We shouldn't be rewarding dangerous ventures across the channel from the safe country, France. At least I think it's safe. I mean, apparently some people disagree. So Reform UK's policy on this is very clear. We're going to have offshore immigration centres. This means anyone who arrives in the country illegally will either be sent back to France. We can do that. That has been checked. But also, we've got these offshore immigration centres. This means that we can process everyone equally, and we can assess their claims and see, okay, who's genuinely in need, and also at the same time who can actually help our country as well as we're helping them. My personal policy on this is I would genuinely love to welcome as many people as possible who align with our values to come and live in this country. We are an open country, and we have been in the past. But the fact is, the current numbers of migration, whether that's asylum or people coming here anyway, it's too much. We have to be building a house every 2 minutes, and I'm sure, but I know for a fact, that Roxton cannot support this sort of growth. I'd love to welcome as many as possible, but it's just not possible. We need to have pragmatic immigration policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my parents came over from the West Indies. They were encouraged to come over as part of the Windrush generation, and they were invited over and to add value. And once you're here, legally, then you should be entitled to everything that is available. And you shouldn't be picking and choosing once you're here. So, due to population growth, the pressure is getting so great, and people coming into the country, the only solution is to stop them in the first place. So we must stop them in the first place. Otherwise, we will have too much pressure on our schools, on our roads, GP appointments, you name it. Everything goes under pressure. So I'm very supportive of the measures that the Conservative Party are taking. There is one solution to some of the problems, for example, to try and break the organised crime gangs. And the deals that they've done, for example, with Albania to bring down the people coming in by 90% over the last 2 years. So I am supportive of that. So we've got to stop people coming into our borders in the first place, unless they're here on our personal invitation. And also people who are here should get the benefit of what is a fantastic country, and you can spend wisely on all of our citizens once they're here, if we can cope with the pressure.
Thanks very much. Yes, I mean, it's a very emotive issue. You see the boats and you see the water and you see people getting rescued and you see people getting drowned, and it captures the imagination. It's a complex problem, and as Kenneth Clark once said, there are no simple solutions to complex problems. If we look at the balance of things, every year there's 680,000 people in this country die. That's just a natural thing that occurs. Nearly 700,000. Every year in this country we have 700,000 babies born. So that's a nice little balance. That's what life would be like if there was no migration. That's what life would be like if there's no immigration. But we do have migration of about 500,000 people per year. We do have immigration of 1.2 million people per year, given a balance currently of somewhere around 700,000. That's the figure that Darren talks about, that fills up the schools, that makes pressure on the schools, makes pressure on the NHS, makes pressure on the housing, makes for overcrowding. If you expand something very, very quickly by 700,000 per year, the opportunity to integrate into society, because it occurs so quickly, is actually impaired, and therefore proper integration doesn't occur. Because they're mainly men, there's often a gender imbalance in the people that comes here. So, yes, absolutely migration, absolutely immigration, absolutely asylum, in figures that we can afford, that allow us to look after the people that are in the country, our own families and our own children.
Thank you for this question. My main concern is some of the language that has been used around immigration. It shows a complete lack of humanity when people who are desperate and need our help are somehow villainised for showing up. It is not illegal to seek asylum. It is not illegal to be a refugee. Migration is legal. We have depended on migration in this country. As Darren pointed out, we were dependent on the Windrush generation to rebuild this country after the Second World War. It was the Windrush family who came over as nurses and our NHS. Our NHS is dependent on overseas workers. We are letting people down by not actually seeing the potential of everybody who comes to our shores, allowing them to integrate into our society. And yes, I get that the population is growing, but we can account for that. We can actually predict that. We should be planning for that and how these people can actually contribute to our society rather than seeing them as villains and a problem. Thank you.
Opportunity for our candidates to share something that they would love to do as a candidate for Broxtowe. What is the top of your list that you would like to see happen? And we'll be starting with Darren for that one. So what's the top of your list to make an impact in Broxtowe? Go for it.
Okay, so when I was a Member of Parliament, there was an awful lot of things that I did bring in and deliver, but one I didn't manage to do, we were looking at the Arthur Mee Centre for, was to bring in an apprenticeship hub. I was really, really keen on it. When I spoke to PCSOs in Stapleford, I said, what's the main crime? They said 16 to 19-year-olds, a lot of time on their hands, doing a bit of drugs, whatever. My dad said, the devil makes work for idle hands. They shouldn't be, they should be busy. They could be sports. They could, new Stephen Gerrard Academy that's coming. They could be involved in clubs. They could be involved in apprenticeships, learning the skills, mixing with other people. and actually having a chance to move forward in life and employment. And also, university is not for everyone. So an apprenticeship hub to Broxtowe would be the main thing I want to achieve.
John?
I haven't finished.
You haven't finished.
Yes, I'm going to start in the simplest of fashion. That a year or so ago, when we were looking at the statistics and the burden of dental problems on the population of Nottingham, and the fact that people were pulling out their own teeth, and the fact that you couldn't get a dental appointment for love nor money. There was one dentist at the centre of Nottingham that was offering NHS treatment, but everybody else was private. As that people came out of COVID, they hadn't been to a dentist for 2 years. And the one thing that never picked up afterwards was children going to see the dentist. We know that we've got an enormous burden of dental caries. We know that this is a man-made inequality because Mansfield, Ashfield and parts of Newark are already fluoridated, and those children have got 1/3 less dental caries than your children. So we not only have a burden of disease, we've got an inequity, not just an inequality, an inequity, because we have actually created that. And number 3, we have an answer to it, which is fluoridation of the water supply, supported as one of the top 10 interventions anywhere in the world by the NHS, supported by the British Dental Association, supported by the British Medical Association, and supported by Nottingham City Council, Nottingham County Council, supported by Severn Trent Water, supported by Anglican Water. I want to see children smile. When a child has physical pain, a child's in pain, when a child can't eat proper food, when a child can't find his dentist, what do? We fluoridate the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, these are 2 really good points that's been raised by my fellow candidates. For me, I think it is access to warm, safe, affordable housing. I'd like to see everybody have access to that. I'd like everybody to be able to generate their own home energy so that they aren't in fuel poverty. I'd like everybody to live in a warm house that's well insulated. I'd like everybody who wants to have their own house actually be able to get onto the property ladder. It is very difficult at the moment. We have in the Green Party a range of ideas of how we can actually manage that. Things like building new social housing, things like putting rental caps on, things like ending right to buy so that people can access housing, and also that housing needs to be of the right quality, because there are a lot of people in Broxtowe especially who are facing homelessness on waiting lists for social housing, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to tackle in this area. Thank you.
Very simple answer from me. I don't know what the scope of the question is. If I had magical powers, I would just wave my wand, I'd get rid of all the potholes. And that includes all the potholes on the Beeston Park Run course. I've done it several times, and many of our community just can't do it now because those paths haven't been repaired. And as MP, I would work on those potholes and making sure that whether it's on roads or paths, that we can all travel in the best way possible. Thank you.
Okay, so this will start back at, where are we at? 2v2, starts with yourself, isn't it? Right? Is that right? I lost place now. Yeah. Since privatisation, the water companies have made vast profits whilst taking out huge loans and not investing sufficiently in infrastructure, resulting in increasing amounts of sewage being discharged into rivers and waterfall courses. Is there a case for these and other essential services to be brought back into public ownership?
Yes. It's actually Green Party policy to actually bring the water companies back into public ownership. Severn Trent Water are paying out colossal sums to their dividends to their shareholders. Obviously, in Stapleford, we had Storm Babbitt and the flooding conditions. We know that the drains are not necessarily blocked, but they're not capable of containing the water that we might see with climate change. We need to upgrade all those systems. Private industry is not interested in upgrading systems. They are interested in keeping things going and paying money in private dividends to their shareholders. The water quality is horrific on the Erewash. It is one of the most polluted rivers in the UK. I think it made the top 20. I think it was number 11 for outflow sewage discharge. I have personally seen the water quality there because I've been involved in research work looking at water quality at Attenborough Nature Reserve. I did a 10-year study there. We're actually starting up a project called Needham Freshwater Observatory to look at water quality, and I can tell you firsthand how bad that river is and the consequences of that. It's actually really, really having an impact on the whole of the Attenborough Nature Reserve, which I know we all feel very passionate about with it being our local area. So yes, I would re-nationalise. I would re-nationalise the water companies. Thank you.
Well, look, I would totally agree. The current funding structure doesn't work. The fact is, Teresa's right. The companies, they're making profits and they're not making infrastructure investments. That's wrong. But I also don't think that making it a public entity will do much either. Currently, there's no incentive for them to make infrastructure improvements because they can take profit out. But if it was a public company, we've seen how they've been run in the past. It would require, it's not necessarily impossible, but it'd be very, very difficult to incentivise every person working for that if there's no form of reward. What we need is a different system, one that mixes both approaches, one where there can still be private investment into our water companies, but they can only make profit from that, and the profit has to be based on performance. It can't be based on what the shareholders want, it has to be based on the people getting the service that these private companies are supposed to be giving them. Definitely not. We have to regulate it, but I don't think a public entity would solve all of its problems, if we're being honest. Thank you.
Darren.
Yes, this is a huge problem, and I spent a lot of time Storm Babette, Storm Henk, big public meetings here in Stapleford and Trowell and elsewhere. We were due to get the flowing minister here, but ran out of time for the general election. So it's a big issue that needs to be looked at strategically. Question is, in terms of flooding, in the mix is privatising water companies having a worse effect, and would going back to nationalisation actually help in that scenario in flooding? Well, there's a question for that. In terms of since the Conservatives have been in, what they've done is monitored our water and sewage, our rivers and sewage, more rigorously, and that has produced what we know now to be a big problem. That was always a big problem, we just didn't know it before. Now we've run out of time to sort of prove ourselves in terms of how we're going to get a solution to it, but we do need to get a solution to it. But the fact is, we now know what the problem is, and that's what's achieved there. In terms of privatisation and nationalisation, I'm yet to see a really good example of going back to nationalisation and it actually improving anything, to be honest. So I'm not sure that's the answer, but I don't have any answers for you here, but it's definitely something we need to address.
Open water swimming, one of the greatest treatments for anything you could ever have, going into that cold water. Footballers spend millions of pounds on ice baths so they can sit in an ice bath and recover, and you can just jump into an icy water in the middle of winter. Except that you can't, because it's full of sewage, it's full of excrement, it's full of E. coli, it's full of Campylobacter, giving you some of the greatest, most prolonged episodes of diarrhea that you'll ever have in your whole life. The problem is, not long ago, Home Pierpoint had to cancel a kayaking episode because of an outbreak of Campylobacter. Historically, this is not sewerage companies dumping sewage. It's the system that has an automatic overflow that cannot easily be switched off, and that is a problem. Now, privatised companies versus companies that are nationalised. There's about a 1/8 increase in cost of government within an organisation compared with a private company. About an 8. I would be prepared to pay that 1/8 extra in order to guarantee the clarity of the waters of Lake Windermere and all of those wonderful national treasures that we've actually got, in order to make it safe for people to go out and swim in the waters and invigorate themselves. My God, that would be wonderful. You do have twin lakes in Nuneaton, there's no sewerage there, you can happily go there. So, nationalisation in the morning without hesitation.
So starting with Joseph this time. With universities cutting courses and making redundancies and businesses not providing enough quality apprenticeships, how will you make the future more optimistic for young people?
Thank you very much for the question. It's of course very close to me. We have several policies to address this. One of the more interesting ones that I think we should be posting more as a party is we're going to encourage, first of all, universities to start offering 2-year undergraduate course. I have experience of doing an undergraduate course recently. Some of the things you do are very simple. You know, some of the tests you're doing are just multiple choice tests. When in reality, actually, I feel there are many areas where we can be pushing ourselves more, and I feel like lots of universities, they obviously want to increase the length of the degrees, but that's maybe not the most helpful thing for young people in life. So 2-year degree courses where it's feasible, we'll be looking into that for sure. Another thing, right now you get a student loan, and unless you're earning £60,000 a year, which is a lot, far above average, you are never going to be able to pay that back, and you'll just be paying it now until you're 60 under the changes the Conservatives have made. That's not sustainable. Reform UK have made it very clear we will scrap interest rates repayments on student loans. That's not unsustainable. Students still rightly, after many years of free state education, it's right that they have to contribute in a way that does not impact their chances in life. But it's not fair that they can never get hold of that debt, so we would absolutely stop that. And we do want to provide tax relief for businesses who are offering apprenticeships, and we also want to use apprenticeships to get more young people back into work, make work pay, and ensure that they're being paid fairly. Thank you.
Yes, as I've already mentioned, I'm a huge fan of Conservative government pledges 1,000 more apprenticeships, and what they're doing is they're looking at some degrees that would really pay off in full life in terms of usefulness for you getting a job and doing well in life. And they'll use stopping those to pay for those 100,000 new apprenticeships. I think skills in general, I think having skills for people. I was co-chair of the Midlands Engine All Party Parliamentary Group, and what they said across the Midlands, including Birmingham, was that 22% of the jobs, and there are plenty of jobs about there, were through lack of skills. So what we need to do is give people the skills, have them locally. There's certain things you're not going to travel. You know, down at the, I've been speaking to a company that had somebody who was doing ground maintenance, and they were doing it at Nottingham and Basford, and then that stopped, and then they were doing it in Derby, that stopped. They were going up to Hull, and that had potential to stop, could go to Suffolk for 1 day a week and then go back and work up in Moor Green. It's just not likely to happen. So have them skills local, and also what I discovered was a government programme called Multiply, which was happening here in Stapleford. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I was speaking to a lady, she said she didn't do maths at school, but she's doing this course now because she wants to help her son with homework. So through life, skills and having the availability locally, absolutely magic.
Thank you.
Some of them are the most flexible, the most creative, the most imaginative of generations that I've ever seen. To make me look like an imbecile at times. I hugely envy their IT skills. I hugely envy their ability to use artificial intelligence. I hugely admire their ability to adapt to a changing environment in which they find themselves. I mean, you get kids today who would jump from job to job to job. In my day, you looked for a job for life. You went in and joined the bank, and 30 years later they gave you a clock and you retired. But today's youth are so much more creative, so much more imaginative. So I don't have any great worries for them from an occupational point of view. I worry about them from a social isolation point of view. I worry about them from the length of time they spend on the screens. I worry about them from learning the basic social skills because they're communicating through texting, etc. And they can't pick up social cues as to how they're getting on with people. They can't talk to people, they can't relate to people because they're 18 hours a day on that. They're depressed, there's suicide, there are so many more challenges for the youth of today, far more so than the lack of apprenticeships, that the world that they're coming into, it really needs somebody to actually provide services for them, to help them with their mental health, to help them with their socialising, and actually turn around that world that we've created of isolation and start to get people back together again. I think that's what the youth of today need. They need to be socially more interactive.
Thank you. Like I said, we had a hustings at Chilwell School earlier this week where it was focused on young people. And as I actually pointed out then, regardless of who gets in, it's the young people that are going to feel the impact the greatest because they're going to be living with the consequences of whatever decisions we make for the longest. Obviously, I think that means, following on to my next point, it is Green Party policy that we actually give votes to 16 and 17-year-olds so that they can actually have a say in their future, rather than as oldies telling them what's good for them. Okay, we might have a bit of experience, but you know, obviously, if we're trying to give hope to people, having them have a say in it is also useful. I appreciate that university isn't for everybody, but I would not want a young person to feel that if they wanted to go to university, they couldn't because they couldn't afford it. So Green Party policy is to abolish tuition fees and have free university courses for those who want it. I would also say we are facing a climate emergency, and I know I'm babbling on about the environment, but for young people, this must be terrifying because I might not live to see the worst of it, but obviously young people now who are going to be around a lot longer than I am will probably have that. So I'm just going to finish off and say I'm sorry, Darren, I don't think that voluntary service and enforced voluntary work and national service is what young people want or will inspire them. Thank you.
The next question, and the next question is, if you are our next MP, what are you going to do in the area to prevent further flooding, and how will you work with central government to ensure those affected by flooding get better funding and support for all those affected, particularly in Trowell and Stapleford by the ongoing flooding issues?
Continue what I've started. So we had a storm before all of that, particularly in Trowell. I had a lot of engagement with the local councillors there, the residents there, about Boundary Brook, etc. For example, could we get some solutions there if we change the brook, straighten it out, but that ended up with further down the line complications after spending all of that money. So we came up with flood level resilience, which when we had Storm Babette and Henk wasn't sufficient for doing the job for a couple of reasons. One, because the banks of the areas were broken, it was much more than was expected, and then also I think the building of them by the company that did it was poor as well, so the environmental and so my approach to it is, first of all, short term and long term. Short term, get all the agencies together, which is what I did in Stapleford and I did in Trowell. So you've got the Notts County Council and the Lead Flood Authority via East Midlands, Severn Trent doing the sewage, you've got Environment Agency doing the water. So there's a number of agencies that have to come together, and even if Boxley Borough Council to do the grants. that need to come together, and if we can't update people and bring them along with us and establish what exactly is needed for the MP to take to Parliament, then we'll be sort of going off on a tangent. So it's very, very key that we engage with the public, find out what is needed, and then the MP is there to champion. I'm the only one. I've got had a sign up in my office. What's in it for Broxton? So that's what they've got to do, speak to the ministers, get the ministers down here, speak in Parliament and champion everybody here for the problems we've had with flooding and try and get a long-term solution to it.
Thank you very much. A second, I thought you were doing physics there for a second. So go for it.
Well, yes, I was just trying to work out the solution. It will take me a little bit. I need some young people to help me with it. I had a person in, and I was speaking to them recently, and their diabetes had gone through the roof. Their HbA1c was off the scale, and they said to me, for the last 6 months, I've not been in my house. I said, well, where have you been? I've been in a hotel. Why have you been in a hotel? Because my house was flooded and I had to leave the house and go into it. The impact of flooding is quite catastrophic on the individuals that are in that. And if you have to manage other aspects of your life at the same time as being made homeless from your home, that's a very significant challenge. There's another person in Campbell was pregnant when the water overflowed from the trowel down into it. I'm going to say that Darren has been hugely actively involved in trying to sort out those problems, and they are, again, one of those things that there is no simple answer to complex problems. Some of it's historic, that the volume of water that's meant to go through pipes is greater than the diameter that the pipes actually can maintain, and therefore you have to get an overflow because that's what happens. And the other thing is overdevelopment. We've got so many people building on floodplains, etc., and those floodplains are causing that water to roll over into houses that wouldn't traditionally be flooded. I have to bring in Mr. McRae here, who's done a lot on flooding as well. So those people, because of that, we need, as Darren says, to involve all of the agencies, because it's not one single problem. Nobody controls the rain just falls. But perhaps the Green Party can control the climate. I'm not going to stop with that. I'm going to say, I'm going to pass it over to the Green Party to control the climate and save the people of Town and Stapleford from further floods. Over to you, Teresa.
Obviously, yeah, like, I can't control the climate. We are going to get more extreme weather events. That's what's on the horizon. And sadly, you know, what happened during Storm Babbitt was a bit of a wake-up call about the impact that this is going to have. The best way of preventing flooding, like this has already been alluded to, is to actually not build on floodplain. But obviously those people who are on there, they've got a problem. We can't just stop water coming up. But what we can do is try and slow it down further up the catchment. That's the best way of preventing flooding, because you slow the water down. I was actually at the Townsdeal briefing session yesterday for the, you know, the 21.1 million, and I don't know if you've heard about the new cricket pitch in Trowell, but I was very pleased to hear that there is going to be a scheme put in place on the new cricket pitch just up from Trowell, near Boundary Brook, so that the flow rate from that area is being reduced from 50 litres a second to 4 litres a second. So that should help alleviate some of the problems in Trowell. But that's the kind of scheme that we need, so that there are areas further up the catchment on smaller tributaries that can actually catch the water. But that needs funding as well. So Green Party want to actually give the Environment Agency 1.5 billion extra a year to put in place things like this, so that we can mitigate the worst of the weather when it comes. Thank you.
So full honesty, our Reform UK's contract with the people, we don't call it a manifesto because apparently it's associated with lies. When people hear manifesto, they hear the word lie. That doesn't come up until Monday, so there are certain policies like this, so I can't give you any specific figures. But after 14 years of Conservative government, Public spending is at its most inefficient rate ever. We've increased government spending by £200 billion a year since 2019. Yet, people feel poorer and there's less money to spend on crucial services like flooding. We have to address these key issues, and if we want the funding to address these key issues, then we have to spend our money more efficiently. Additionally, we need to stop paying the big banks £40 billion on quantitative easing payments. It's money that we're just giving away for free. It doesn't need to happen. There's been multiple news sources, very much outside of reform, saying that this needs to be done. I don't know why the other parties haven't thought of it. It's money that we can use on many things, and that includes flood defences.
Well, we're coming towards the end of our time. We still have loads of questions, so I'm going to try and summarise two of the big questions. But there's three big questions here, so I'll summarise the three big questions, and then you can kind of try and form an answer. So sorry about this. So one of the big questions is about poverty in the UK. So that's childhood poverty. 4.3 million children in the UK live in poverty. What do you aim to do about that? Coupled with that question is to do with housing. What are we going to deal with the housing crisis and alleviate the problems of housing, including building on green land as well. And then finally, this is a summary of all these questions. The third one is to do with, again, it's an environmental question. Actually, probably the most, we had a large number of questions about this. How do we take steps to improve our environment in terms of looking after it after all the years of taking out it? How do we put back into it? So those are the three questions. It's the last question. So the first one is childhood poverty, housing and the environment. So you can choose any of the three questions to answer, and you've got about 2 minutes on the whole thing. Easy, isn't it? You know, this is so easy. In fact, we'll give you a little bit longer, but just over 2 minutes. Who would dare to go first?
I'm happy to.
Okay, good. Okay, all right.
Right. Okay. Got to be fast on this. Okay. So reform is very clear to end child poverty. Nigel's talked about the TV debate. We're going to end the limit on the child benefit. It's important that we incentivise families, and it's very important that we get the population growing. Our next and further on from that, we want to give more allowance to couples who are married, and give more families front load the child benefit system. And three questions. It's a lot. Sorry. Environment, very simple. Right now we're giving huge subsidies. There are fossil fuels, let's be fair, but we're giving many more subsidies to renewable energy sources, and that's actually making them inefficient. There's no reason for us to try and increase the efficiency of these energy sources if we keep giving them money. We have to be harsh. We have to say, no, this isn't working. You've got to improve your efficiency, then we can invest in you. And we've also got to invest more in nuclear. Nuclear is a great source. They use it in France, and they've got much better energy. You know, people are afraid of it because the Russians can't manage it, but we all know how bad the Russians are. You know, if we can have safe, genuine nuclear energy in this country. And housing, it's simple, less immigration, immigration for key workers only, build on brownfield sites, protect the green belt, but actually fast track housing application of the brown belt, increase, and again, reverse 14 years of Tory tax rises by increasing the personal allowance threshold to 20,000, pulling people out of tax, putting people back into work. But crucially, going back to the issue of child poverty, most parents say, polls have been done on this, most parents would rather stay at home and look after their family. And it's up to you whether both parents work a little bit, whether it's the mum who works or it's the dad who works, whatever you want. But we have to support families by ensuring that no matter who it is who works, whether it's both the mother or the father, that they can make adequate money to support the family. And because of the Tory tax rise and the fiscal drag that we've seen in the last 14 years, it's now very hard to do that, and that also comes into university tuition, which is a broken system. I don't think I've quite got time to talk about that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well done. So again, Juliet 3 is the first one. Thank you for having a go at stab at it. So it's 3 questions. So it's child poverty, it's housing and the environment. Whichever order you want to put them in, your priorities. So we should go to yourself then. You look like you're poised. Go for it, John.
Yes, I was just going to leave. Yes, 3 questions, 3 in 1. I think when you look at child poverty, you can't get away from the seminal work of Professor Sir Michael Marmot in his 2010 paper, Fair Society, Healthy Lives. But poverty cannot exist with health equality. It only exists with inequality, and therefore in order to correct poverty, in order to correct that inequality, you have to look at the Marmot principles of giving every child the best start in life. You have to create an equitably fair society and share the wealth across that society. In terms of a child, we've got to give them the best start. We've got to give them an education. Through that education, we've got to allow them to fulfil their maximum potential. When a child fills its maximum potential, it has got the ability to get a good job. When the child gets a good job, it has the ability to make a home, and then it can create a healthy life, which keeps them well longer in life and allows them to live longer. So giving every child the best start in life is the way in which to do that. In terms of the environment, we in Nottingham, interestingly, have one of the first fusion reactor plants in the whole world in the north of Nottingham. And if that works, at the moment the power that's been generated by it is little more than could make you a cup of tea. But I do believe that down the line this will be the #1 CO2 emission negative power to power the world. Never mind powering anything else. So there are hopes out there. I'm also a great fan of nuclear, because nuclear doesn't create any climate change, and the amount of environmental harm, the actual nuclear waste itself is so tiny that it could fit on half of a football field. So yes, give every child the best start in life, and equity would be my answers.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be super quick here on super 3 questions. Ending child poverty. End the 2-child benefit cap. Remove bedroom tax and increase universal credit by £40. That's 3 policies that we've got. The housing crisis, I've already talked about a bit. 150,000 new social houses, what we want to build. Make sure that we are bringing back unused houses back into the system by giving legislation for housing authorities to actually get first offer on any house that's not been occupied for 6 months. Steps to improve the environment. We have not got time really to dance around this. Technology that we know that works. We know that solar works, we know that wind works, we know that we've got some hydroelectric that works. Nuclear, bit far down the line for us, we've not got time for that. Propulsion, electric propulsion, yes, we know it works. Hydrogen propulsion, still a bit further down the line. Let's stick to what we know works. We can get that going very quickly. Also, habitat. We need to protect the habitat that we've got. We need to change the planning rules, because we have just brought in a net gain on habitat, but we need to be implementing that very quickly and being more stringent on it. And that's 2 questions answered quickly. Thank you.
You've got 30 seconds more. Anything else you want to say? No, that's fine. Brilliant. Okay. Okay, over to you, Darren.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to get the benefit of going last in this particular question, but I can honestly say, regardless of what the Conservatives are planning to do, I do agree with all the things that the panel has said. Certainly, you've got to think about giving children the best start in life, 100%. Increase universal credit, I agree, but the method of universal credit is a good one, because what it does is it encourages people into work. Because if you're in work and you're low paid, you still get benefits. So the idea is that you're better off in work. And I think the route out of poverty for people are jobs, and I strongly believe that. So creating jobs, housing, certainly I'm very much in agreement with the neighbourhood plan. Delighted to see that Chetwynd Total Chilwell neighbourhood plan was adopted recently in May. spent a lot of time with them on that one and tried to promote the Total Link Road because it's what the locals wanted in that area to meet the housing demand. Like I said, I came to Nottingham to buy a house. You know, my children couldn't afford to buy a house if we didn't help them out. So it's having a home, a rented home or a home, being able to have an address that you can then apply for jobs for. You can then have pride in being in that place, and you can take responsibility for your families in your own home. It's just the bedrock of it all. Housing has got to be sorted out in this country. It's in a dreadful state. With a first world country like us, we need to build houses. The Conservatives say they'll build 1.6 million houses in the next Parliament. Certainly needed to be done. And finally, on the environment, there is a moral argument which I'm 100% in agreement with. I don't need to repeat what everybody said about the environment. We need to worry about it for our younger people. It won't affect me, but it will affect them. And what is it going to be like for our children and grandchildren? But it's also an opportunity because we've done a lot of innovation in this country. We're a wind superpower, more or less. Radcliffe-on-Soar, there's going to be development there and so on. What we must do is maintain the manufacturing so we become the centre of excellence for green technology, have green jobs here. People come to our country for green jobs and green technology, and that's a great future for our economy as well.
Great, thank you very much. Well, can we give our candidates all a round of applause? Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry we haven't been able to address all your questions, but there's been some time afterwards for you to have a chat with the candidates while here. There's still some more tea and coffee available towards the end, so please take that opportunity. And a big thank you to Rich as well for helping organise it all. So, round of applause.
Thank you to all these guys. Well, thank you to the Vicar. My mum's hiding in the back. I want to say thank you to my mum for doing the teas on her own. So yeah, if you want to spend a bit of time talking to the candidates before they disappear, it's really good of you all to be here. And if anyone else wants to help put the chairs away, please do, because there's a lot of chairs. Thank you. Thank you for coming, everybody. Thank
Where did the chairs go, mate?
We'll have to stack them up and then they go over there.